Ladies and gentlemen, it is draft week, and I am so excited. For those of you who don't know, the NFL draft is my favorite event and my favorite days of the year, and we are just a few days away. Now, as many of you know, if you follow this channel, um, I am a huge Broncos fan. The Denver Broncos are my favorite team. I was born, raised, and live in Colorado, and I go to every games. My dad and I, we have season tickets, and I'm just so excited. And this is my final mock draft for the Denver Broncos 6.0. We've done 5 of these before this, obviously, and I just want to say that I'm going to try and switch this one up because my Denver Broncos 5.0 mock draft, I looked back at that, and I definitely think that those are all still real possibilities, and I could definitely have just copied that one and did it again, but that would be boring. So I'm going to switch it up and change the mock draft a little bit from the last one, obviously, to get a little bit more diversity of what could happen on draft day and widen the range of Broncos fans to different prospects that we could potentially see joining our favorite team. Now, like I said, this is going to be the final Denver Broncos mock draft. I'll have a full 32-team first-round mock draft, and I might have some more depending on if my friends want to do a two-person mock draft, but we'll see. So yeah, we're just going to jump into this, and yeah, I hope you enjoy. As always, I want to remind you that Jesus is King. I pray that you give your life to Him. He's got a plan and a purpose for you, and I just truly hope that you give your life to Jesus. As a Christian, I just have to share this message that if you believe with your whole heart that Jesus died on the cross for your sins and He rose from the dead 3 days later, and you truly believe that with your whole heart, and then you'll go to heaven. I feel like it's so important to share, and whether you accept it or not, it's up to you, and I just truly hope you do, but it's something that I have to do to spread the gospel and get it out there to as many people as possible. Now, with that being said, let's jump into the mock draft, and first things, okay. So at pick number 64, I have Roger McCreary, cornerback out of Auburn. Before I continue this, I want to ask you to leave a like and subscribe. As I'm recording this, we're at 299 subscribers, and if you could subscribe and we get me to 300 before the NFL draft, I would be so grateful. But yeah, let's jump in to this. At 64, I have Roger McCreary, cornerback out of Auburn. Now, McCreary would definitely have to fall to us. I see him going in the middle second round. I'd say late 40s, early 50s is where he's expected to go. But in this mock, McCreary happened to fall to us out of Auburn. McCreary is one of my favorite corners in this draft class. I believe he is my 6th best corner in this class. That's my updated rankings. So McCreary, I just love McCreary. Could you imagine? Obviously, you have Patrick Surtain as our cornerback number 1. We have Quan Williams as our slot. Obviously, right now, Ronald Darby is our cornerback 2. But if we have McCreary sit and develop, could you imagine Patrick Surtain and Roger McCreary as your top 2 corners? That would be insane. You have an Auburn corner and an Alabama corner as your top 2. Kind of funny, kind of ironic, but yeah, I love McCreary, and I think there's a definite possibility the Broncos draft him if they fall to him. If they fall to the Broncos, or if he falls to the Broncos, he's a no-brainer. You obviously pick him. He's had a top 30 draft visit with the Broncos, and I know George Paton likes to keep his cards close to his chest, so this could be a smoke. But if he's there, I think the Broncos would waste no time and absolutely draft him. During his time with the Auburn Tigers, he had 111 solo tackles with 24 assist tackles for a total of 135 tackles. He has 30 passes defended and 6 interceptions. And yeah, McCreary would be an absolute slam dunk pick if he fell to the Broncos and we took him. In the 3rd round, at pick 75, I had the Broncos taking Brian Asamoah, linebacker out of Oklahoma. We need linebackers, in my personal opinion. I don't think Asamoah would definitely start his rookie season, but definitely would eventually work his way to becoming a starter. Because right now on the roster with linebackers, including Asamoah, we have Josie Jewell, Alex Singleton, we have Jonas Griffith, Baron Browning, Justin Sternad, and Brian Asamoah. And then I guess if you want to throw in Barrington Wade, he's also in that category. He's an inside linebacker, right? I think Barrington Wade is. But anyway, let me just look this up because I don't. I'm pretty sure Barrington Wade is an inside line. Yeah, he's an inside linebacker. So I mentioned all the inside linebackers, and I definitely think Brian Asamoah could work his way up to being an eventual starter, potentially next year, because I do think Josie Jewell, Alex Singleton will be the starters. I would like to see Baron Browning probably rotated in there. Semyonis Griffith, I really liked what he saw. But I like the upside that Asamoah provides, and with the Oklahoma Sooners, he had 106 solo tackles with 62 assist tackles for a total of 168 tackles. He has 12.5 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, and an interception. And we're going to address linebackers somewhere. I would like to see fairly early. Obviously, it was hard passing up Chad Muma, one of my favorite prospects, a local kid out of Wyoming. But we got McCreary, so I have us taking the best linebacker available at this point in the draft, and Brian Asamoah. At pick number 96, I have us selecting Drake Jackson, edge rusher out of Southern California. Now, Jackson has taken a big fall. I remember when he was touted as the second best edge rusher behind Thibodeau in the preseason. Didn't really have that great of a season and sort of fell. But I like him as a developmental edge rusher for the Broncos, obviously with Bradley Chubb, Randy Gregory, Malik Reed back on a deal. Not Baron Browning. Jonathan Cooper, who had a really good rookie season for a 7th round pick. I like him in a developmental role to eventually take over. Say Bradley Chubb doesn't live up to expectations, which I hope he does. I hope we re-sign Bradley Chubb, but he's there if needed, and he could be a nice depth edge rusher for the Broncos. If Bradley Chubb stays, it would be Bradley Chubb, Randy Gregory, and then you'd have Drake Jackson as that rotational third edge rusher, and I think this would be a great pick for the Broncos at the end of the 3rd round. Not counting, of course, the compensatory picks. And with the Trojans, Jackson had 57 solo tackles with 46 assist tackles for a total of 103 tackles. He has 25 tackles for loss, 12.5 sacks, and 2 interceptions with, obviously, the University of Southern California Trojans. In the 4th round, at pick number 115, I had the Broncos selecting Braxton Jones, offensive tackle out of Southern Utah. A small school guy, but at 6'5", 310 pounds, he is a beast and someone who I would like to develop. Obviously, Garrett Bowles is the starting left tackle, so I would say Braxton Jones maybe sits behind him and learns, or potentially, depending on how well he plays, he could compete for the starting right tackle spot. He could compete with Billy Turner, Tom Compton, Calvin Anderson. I do think Billy Turner ends up winning that job, and we'll talk about that later. But I like Braxton Jones as a potential developmental tackle because when you look at the tackles on the roster, Garrett Bowles obviously here for a couple more years. He signed that extension 2 seasons ago, and it kicked in last season. And then Tom Compton, Billy Turner, and Calvin Anderson are all on 1-year deals. And to me, will we bring him back? Maybe Braxton Jones develops and he starts next year. I don't know. I really like Braxton Jones. He had a very solid combine, ran a 4.97 40, had a 25.5 vertical, and he had an 108 broad jump. I think the attributes are there for a developmental tackle, and I'd like to see what he could develop into under Butch Berry, our new offensive line coach. And then with our back-to-back picks, at pick 116, I'm having us selecting Fedarian Mathis, defensive lineman out of Alabama. Now, we got DJ Jones, who I like as that nose tackle position. I know a lot of people have him as that Shelby Harris replacement, but I like him as that nose tackle position. To me, I think Fedarian Mathis could play that nose tackle position well, or I think he could play one of the ends. Obviously, right now, if I were to guess, it's going to be DJ Jones as the nose tackle, and then you have Draymond Jones and McTelvin Agim as our ends. But Fedarian Mathis would provide an instant competition to any of those edge positions, and if he competed for that, I really like Phidarian Mathis. I think this is such a value pick here in the 4th round at pick 116. I think this is about the range he's going to go, but you're getting tremendous value in Phidarian Mathis. And with the Crimson Tide, he had 53 solo tackles with 76 assist tackles for a total of 129 tackles. He has 16 tackles for loss and 10.5 sacks with the Crimson Tide. Phidarian Mathis, he's a beast. Would love to pick him up to help that defensive line, especially in the run-stopping game. He would help out so much in the run-stopping game, especially if McTelvin Agim doesn't work out. Because I love Draymond Jones. I think he's a solid player for us. Their 3rd round pick in 2019. McTelvin Agim hasn't really got that chance. Our third round pick in 2020 hasn't really got the opportunity to shine. But I would like competition between Mathis and Agim for that potential starting end position. Moving on to the 5th round, I have Chigoziem Okonkwo. This is the 2nd pick in the 5th round, so I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, Okonkwo is going to go in the 4th round. Well, I mean, this is the 2nd pick in the 5th round, so it's close. And he was available here in the 5th round, so I think this is tremendous value. Getting the most athletic tight end in the draft here in the 5th round. Unbelievable value here. To me, Okonkwo can be that Noah Fant replacement. Him and Alberto can be that elite 1-2 punch that are just super athletic tight ends. Obviously, we're going to run a couple 2 tight end sets, and Okonkwo would fill in tremendously because right now we have Alberto Cuebanam as our receiving tight end, and then our other 2 tight ends, Eric Tomlinson is a blocking tight end, and Sean Bayer is another blocking tight end. So we need another athletic tight end. So I would definitely expect the Broncos to target a tight end in this draft, whether that be a Trey McBride, an Isaiah Likely, a Chigoziem Okonkwo, a Jelani Woods. I would look for them to address one, and here this is tremendous value, getting the most athletic tight end and essentially a Noah Fant replacement here in the 5th round. With the Maryland Terrapins, he had 77 receptions for 717 yards. He averaged about 9.3 yards per play, and he scored 8 touchdowns with the Terrapins. In the 6th round, I'm selecting Tyquan Thornton, wide receiver out of Baylor. Now, many of you know, if you've watched my last mock drafts, he was always a 7th round pick for me. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people are going to reach for Thornton with his speed. He ran an incredible 40 time. I believe it was at 4.26, but don't quote me on that. Thornton would be our returner because he has that speed and explosiveness. I don't think the skills to play receiver have quite translated yet. I think he would need to develop to be a solid receiver in the NFL. But using him as a returner, especially since Deontay Spencer is not returning to the team, I think would be very beneficial. And I love Thornton. And even if we have to reach for him just a little bit, I would love the value of Thornton to be our returner on this team. And yeah, I would love to take him in the 7th round, but unfortunately, I think the speed is going to be reached for. You might even have to take him in the 5th round because of teams wanting to reach on speed. But with the Baylor Bears, Thornton had 143 receptions for 2,242 yards, averaging about 15.7 yards per play and scoring 19 touchdowns with the Bears. And now moving on to our first of 2 7th round picks, we have Devontae Price, running back out of FIU, Florida International University. And to me, Devontae Price would provide that nice scat back role and complementary piece to Javonte Williams. Javonte Williams being that bruising back that's going to be hard to take to the ground. Well, Devontae Price is going to be your speed, elusive back who can make people miss in open space. And he's also really good in the receiving game. So at FIU with the Panthers, Devontae Price had 369 rush attempts for 2,203 yards, averaging about 6 yards per carry and scoring 15 touchdowns. And then in the receiving game, he had 45 receptions for 307 yards, averaging about 6.8 yards per play, and he scored 1 receiving touchdowns with the Panthers. I think this is tremendous value. One of those underrated running backs in this draft. I love Devontae Price, and he's been one of my guys, if he's available here in the 7th round, that I would love to snag up instantly because I love that scat back role. He would kind of fill that Phillip Lindsay role because Mike Boone, I do think, is fairly similar to Javonte Williams. We don't really have that scat back on the roster, and I think we could get a scat back here late in the draft, especially with Javonte Williams obviously being our number 1 running back in this year's draft. And then finally, with pick 234, 2 picks later in the 7th round, I'm going with Bubba Bolden, safety out of Miami. And Bolden is a very interesting story. If you watch some of my videos in the pre-draft process, preseason of college football, preseason of the NFL, Bubba Bolden was touted as the second best safety behind, obviously, Kyle Hamilton. But, man, he has fallen so far. But I still like what you get in Bubba Bolden. And if he's here with our second, 7th round pick, I would love to take a shot on him just to have him develop behind Justin Simmons. Kareem Jackson's going to be there to mentor him, and I would love to see if he sits and learns behind those two guys what kind of safety he could develop into. And this would be just, I wouldn't say value because I do expect him to be here, but I would love to take a shot on Bubba Bolden out of Miami. And with the Hurricanes, he had 92 solo tackles with 43 assist tackles for a total of 135 tackles. He has 10 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and he has 2 interceptions. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to jump in to what I think the starting offense and defense are going to look like. Now, keep in mind, this is not narrowed down to 53 where there will be 53 players on the roster, and this does not include the whole depth chart. This is just notable players that I thought I would add. So we might have more than 53. We might have less than 53. Who knows? I was just throwing this together just to kind of give that visualization to Broncos fans of what the offense and defense are going to look like. So let's start with the offense. You'll notice the rookies are highlighted in red. Let's start with the offensive line. To me, there's going to be a competition between Lloyd Cushenberry and Quinn Miners for that starting center role. It's going to be tough. I'm going to give it to Cushenberry, but I think Quinn Miners could easily win that role. And then Quinn Miners obviously also is a very solid guard. He filled in for Graham Glasgow, who got injured last year. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Quinn Miners starts above Graham Glasgow this season. Would not shock me. I think Quinn Miners is a beast. I think he was such a great pick. And yeah, to me, Quinn Miners, very, very talented. I think we'll compete for a starting guard and the starting center role. Alrighty, sorry, I had to cut real quick. Moving on to let's go left guard. That's Dalton Risner to me. He struggled. I'm going to be honest, he struggled these past few seasons. He was really good his rookie season, struggled these past few seasons, but I do think he earns a start here. However, if he continues to struggle, I would not mind Netane Moody starting. Moody was a really good prospect coming out in 2020. His only problem was his injury history. So if Dalton Risner continues to struggle, I would not mind throwing Moody in. He looked solid in the starts and games he did get to play. So to me, Dalton Risner gets the nod for now, but if he struggles this season, I would not mind throwing Netane Moody in there to see what he can do. Moving on to the tackles, left tackle, it's going to be obvious. It's going to be Garrett Bowles. Sign him to that massive extension. He's our star left tackle. Backing him up, I'm going with Calvin Anderson, and then Drew Himmelman will be the third string. And then at right tackle, winning the battle, to me, it's going to be Billy Turner. I think he's going to be the best man for the job starting at that right tackle position for the Broncos. Tom Compton, the veteran, backing him up. And then I have the rookie Braxton Jones. He's going to be the third string there, kind of just learning under not just Billy Turner, not just Tom Compton, but all the tackles and just being an understudy and potentially being the starting right tackle next season. Let's move on to the quarterback position. And for the first time in a while, I can say I am confident in the Broncos starting quarterback with Russell Wilson under center. He's going to provide that different type of energy for the offense. Then, of course, Josh Johnson is going to be the backup. We signed him this offseason to a one-year deal. I think he's the perfect backup for Wilson. He kind of plays that similar style of football. And then Brett Rippon, of course, is going to be the third string. I'd expect him to be on the practice squad like he normally is. But I like Brett Rippon. He's a very, very smart quarterback, so I like him as the third string. Moving on to our running backs, it's obviously Javonte Williams as the starter. Second season, I'm excited to see what he can do. Backing him up is Mike Boone. Hopefully he stays healthy this season as he got injured early and never really got to showcase what he could do last season. So I'm hoping he can stay healthy and really show us what he's capable of. Because when he did play in those few moments, he looked really, really good. Really, really good. And then Devontae Price, the rookie running back, I talked about him, that scat back type of role. Throw him in there in the receiving game if you need just a speedster. Devontae Price is right there. Receivers, it's tough as a Jerry Jeudy fan, Jerry Jeudy being my favorite player on the team. I want to throw him as the starting receiver on the outside. However, I think it's beneficial to start Jerry Jeudy in the slot. I think that's his best role, especially with two bigger receivers in Tim Patrick and Courtland Sutton. But yeah, I love Jerry Jeudy. He's my favorite player on the team. I have KJ Hamler backing him up, back healthy. We'll see how he's doing with that ACL injury. I don't want him to strain it or risk his future by re-tearing it or something like that. So I do have him as another guy backing up Jerry Jeudy in the slot, being our slot number 2. However, if there's a 4 wide receiver set, I would expect KJ Hamler to be that 4th wide receiver. And then, of course, you got Tyquan Thornton. He's going to be learning behind KJ Hamler, behind Jerry Jeudy in that slot type of role, but will mostly be used as a special teamer. And speaking of special teamers, I don't have them on this list, but starting kicker is going to be Brandon McManus. Starting punter, Sam Martin. Starting long snapper is going to be Jacob Bobenmoyer. And then starting returner is going to be Tyquan Thornton. Moving on to the outside receivers, it's going to be Courtland Sutton at the 1 for me as the X receiver, and with Kendall Hinton and Tyree Cleveland backing him up. On the opposite side, we got Tim Patrick with Seth Williams and Travis Fulgham backing him up. Tight ends, we got Albert Okwuegbunam as the number 1. He's the most veteran tight end in this offense. He's that athletic tight end, followed by Chigozie Okonkwo, who's going to be our tight end 2 if we need to run a 2 tight end set. Another very athletic guy. And then Eric Tomlinson, the 3rd tight end, is going to be used in blocking packages if you need an extra offensive lineman per se. Eric Tomlinson will be filling into that role. Now let's move on to the defense for the Broncos. And here is what I think the starting defense will look like. At the nose tackle, I like DJ Jones there. Like I said before, I want him as that nose tackle. I think that's going to be a very, very solid role for him, eating up the blocks and just being able to tackle very, very easily. At right defensive end, I have Draymond Jones. I love Draymond Jones. I think he's a steal. He was a steal in the 3rd round for us back in, 2019. McTelvin Agim as that left defensive end. I have him starting right there, as I mentioned earlier, but we'll see how well that goes. Backing up DJ Jones, I have Mike Purcell, very solid run stopper, and Deshaun Williams, both who I like, but I don't really think are top tier starters and would feel much comfortable with DJ Jones starting there. Then I have Fedarian Mathis backing up McTelvin Agim. Like I said earlier, I do see him competing for that starting left end slot, or left end starting spot. And then Jonathan Harris backing them up. Marquise Spencer, a 7th round pick, our 3rd of 3 7th round picks last year, backing up Draymond Jones as the other defensive end. Let's move on. Let's move on to cornerbacks. Why not? Our cornerback 1 is going to be Patrick Surtain. I do have him probably shadowing whoever their number 1 receiver is, kind of like what Jalen Ramsey does, locking them down, and that's what I'd feel very, very comfortable in. You have Quan Williams there, who's going to be our slot corner. So, yeah, he'll be the slot corner. I just didn't make another picture for slot corners, but Quan Williams will be our slot corner. You got Roger McCreary learning under Patrick Surtain, 2 young guys over there. I think that would be beneficial to him. So, yeah, so Surtain, McCreary, Quan Williams in the slot, Ronald Darby as the other starting corner for now. He's still got 2 years left on the deal that we signed him to last offseason. Michael Ojemudia, who looked really good in that last game of the season. And then Isang Bassi, who he was on our team last year. Then he got signed by the Chargers towards the end of the season. They released him, and now he's back on the squad. So those are the corners that are on the team as of right now. Of course, all the rookies are obviously put an asterisk next to their name because we haven't officially drafted them. And obviously, this is probably not going to be what our draft looks like. Our draft is probably going to look entirely differently, but obviously this is just theoretical. Moving into the inside linebackers, we got Josie Jewell and Alex Singleton starting. Those two linebackers. I don't know how I feel about that. There's not really that man coverage linebacker who's able to obviously play man coverage in the pass game. So that's where I'm a little bit nervous. Then you got Justin Sternad and Baron Browning as the number twos. Baron Browning, our second, third round pick last season. I have heard he's going to get some opportunities at edge, so we'll see if he plays there or in the inside linebackers. I do have him as obviously an inside linebacker. Then you have Justin Sternad, who was our fifth round pick in 2020. Didn't look super great last season, so I'm hoping he can take a step up this season. Then you have Brian Asamoah, who I definitely think could leap over Justin Sternad in the depth chart. And then Jonas Griffith, who I think is a really solid special teamer, who looked really great when he had to fill in last season. Now going on to the outside linebackers and edge rushers. At the right outside linebacker, I have Bradley Chubb starting there with Malik Reed and Andre Mens backing him up. I like Malik Reed, but I don't think he's going to get a starting job this season like he did last season. So I think he's going back to that third role like when we had Von Miller, Bradley Chubb, and Malik Reed was there. So, and of course after obviously Shaq Barrett left, which sucks that we lost him. And then Andre Mens, who was an undrafted free agent last season, who I really like and I think is a very, very solid player. Moving on to the left outside linebackers, it's Randy Gregory. I'm hoping to see a lot of production from him this season. Jonathan Cooper, who was really, really productive for a 7th round pick. And then Drake Jackson, who I had as our second, 3rd round pick at 96th overall. Moving on to safeties, I have 7 here. Justin Simmons, obviously, as the starting free safety. I mean, that is no question. Then you got Jamar Johnson, who I'd like to see get more opportunities because he was a healthy scratch all of last season, except for, I think, 1 or 2 games. So I'd like to see him get more opportunities. And then J.R. Reed backing him up, who was a free agent signing. Now, here's where it might get a little controversial. I have Caden Stearns starting at strong safety just because Kareem Jackson showed a little bit of regression last season. And then I have Kareem Jackson backing up Stearns as the strong safety position. And he's going to play more of that rotational nickel type of role for the Broncos. Then I have Bubba Bolden, who was our 7th round pick, and P.J. Locke, who was okay with the Broncos last season. Anyway, this is what I think the team is going to look like, and that was my final Denver Broncos mock draft. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below, and man, I'm so excited for draft day. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you very, very soon.